Okay, so the last topic in chapter 5 is serialization. So that is when you save an object out to a file, it gets saved as bytes, and then you can reload it back from the file and turn it back into an object and work with it again. So there's some rules here that you have to know, just keeping it simple enough to start out with, and then I'll add in a parent class and just explain the rules around that. So firstly, there is a dog class, and this is again taken from the book there as well on page 301 there, that starts out. So a dog here, the class has to implement serializable. Serializable is an interface, and it's just kind of like a label. If it doesn't implement serializable, then you can't save it out to file, and it will throw an exception. I'll show you that there now in a second. So the dog has color is another class here underneath. So again, I'm going to show you what if the member variable doesn't implement serializable. It can have whatever other member variables it wants. The constructor takes in, I have the name for the dog here. That's going to be from the parent class. But listen, I'll leave it there for the minute. Get color, set color, get dog size, set dog size. By the way, that's an int. I'm not quite sure what dog size means as a number, but listen, that's from the book. And a toString there as well, just handy for printing it back out again. The color, basically, it's just an int. It's another class, but it just contains an int for the color size there as well. Now, here's my main underneath. So it looks a little bit tricky, but it's not too bad. So a dog is created. So D1 is a dog. It's Spot. He's a color with a size of 4, and Spot's dog size is 10. To serialize that dog, so you need to create an instance of an object output string. Its constructor needs an output stream, something that is an output stream as well. So basically you can't just pass a string in there for the file name, but you can pass a string into a file output stream. So object output stream will have this method in it called writeObject, and its corresponding one for reading. Object input stream will have a method in it for reading back the object from the file. File output stream does not have that method inside it. So file output stream allows you to pass in the string, and once you have a file output stream, you can pass that into the object output stream constructor. It's in the try with resources brackets there, so it'll automatically get closed. So the printout here is going to print out serializing the dog. Once you have the object output stream, you can just call writeObject, and that's where you pass in the dog object that you want saved. It might be able to find the file, so that's why catch file not found exception. It might be able to write out it might not be able to write out the dog to the file, and it would be the problem there. Now, if I just comment out reading there for a second and just run that. So we can see there that the dog that's created has a collar size of 4 and the dog size is 10. It's serialized the dog, so it has written it out to file. So I've printed the dog out there on line 103. And then it's written out to file, and it's just printed out again. So there's nothing too weird there. Now, if I go and actually look for this file, I'll just show you what it's like if I opened it up. Code dog.sir. So the extension can be anything at all. That's no big deal there. If I open it up, it's not human readable, despite what you might try and make out of it. The colored, so it's not really human readable there. Okay. Back to the file here. So I'll just pop back in the code to read from the file and turn it back into an object. That's your object input stream. That class has the readObject method, and it needs passed into it a file input stream, and that's where you can pass the name of the file. Again, file not found if it can't find that file. IO exception if it had a problem, if it has an error reading, and class not found exception. So if it's reading back from the file and it can't find the dog class, and what I mean by the dog class is into the bin directory here, chapter 5. If it can't find literally that class file, it doesn't know what the dog is made up of, and that would throw a class cast exception there. Or sorry, class not found exception. Not class cast, that's something else completely. So that's running okay there at the minute. And just to go through so serializing there, no issues at all. So just say that your dog class doesn't implement serializable. I'm going to take that out and run my code. then what we get is you get a not serializable exception. So to write out the dog to file, it must implement serializable. The dog has a color object, that too must implement serializable. Just to show you that I fixed the program there for a second. And if I, sorry, I just realized I think I have another program running here. I have a watch service running from earlier. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, if the color there, if that doesn't implement serializable, again, that's going to cause a problem. Not serializable exception because of the color. So whatever the class is that you want to save out to file, the object of the class you want to save out to file, and any member variables must implement serializable. Now, the next thing I want to look at here is you can skip over one of the member variables. Put in the keyword transient. So that means it won't be saved out the file. So I'm just going to run that. So now that's the dog that has been created. That's the one I'm attempting to save to file. Just go back down here to main. I've written it out to file. That's the dog object that was saved to file, so it was serialized. And now when you go to deserialize, because the color is skipped, it's actually not saved out to file. That's a bit inaccurate because I've just printed out the dog object again. The color is not saved out to file. When you go to deserialize it to try and make a dog object out of what was saved, there's no color there. So what happens is it is null. Now I'm just going to put a print out here in the constructor just to test something out. Dog constructor called, and just run it again. Okay, so that's not printed out there anywhere. So the constructor is not called again. So the color it doesn't have a value. So it's null there. Now the next thing that you need to know is, and I've just pasted in some code here. You can step into the serialization process yourself. So say for example that the color is transient, it's skipped, but you want to manually kind of override that behavior. So for some reason, maybe it has to be skipped. But anyway, here's what you need to know. There are two methods that you can put into your class called write object, must be private, must be void, must be write object, and take in an object output stream. And this method is called automatically during the process of serializing. So when you call your object output stream dot write object, you're writing out your dog, this method will automatically get called. So what I have in here is, the code in here is, that's the object output stream, default write operation. So go ahead and save the object as normal. So in this case, it would only save out the dog size. And now you can do any manual writing out yourself. So I'm saying the output stream there, write int. So I'm getting the actual value from the color object of the dog and its color size. So I'm retrieving, their color size is 4. I'm retrieving 4 from the object that was created, and that's manually getting written out. And now that will save out to file manually. And the reason that that's needed is because the color object is transient, it gets skipped. Now reading back in again, there is a method here that you can put in read object. I'm going to comment that out there for a second and just run my program just to show you that I have written out the color size for the dog, but I've written it out, but you need code again to read it back in from the file manually. So the simplest thing is not have any transient variables and just let them write out themselves. But anyway, you need to know this for your exam. So read object, this is how to manually read back the object. So when you're writing the code down below here in main, when your input stream there, .read object, that retrieves it from the file and turns it back into a dog again. And as part of that process, it would automatically call this method for you. So again, you'd have to type in your own into the dog class as private, it's void, read object, takes in an object input stream. You'd have to write the code there, input stream default read operation, or default read object. So read in whatever's there already for the dog out in the file. So in this case, it would be, now I've name here, which I've left out, but I'm going to add that in a minute. So in this case, it's just the dog size. And then you need to read back in the color variable manually. So input stream.readInt. So basically 4 was saved out to the file. So this code here reads back in 4, creates a color object out of it, and assigns that to the dog's member variable. So it is a little bit tricky, but that's how you manually take the value from the file, turn it into a color object, and assign it to the dog's member variable. When you serialize, basically it's saving out the values of the variables. So this is kind of turning it back into an object again. So that's how to manually read back from the file. So when I run this now, you're going to see that null down there, down the bottom, is going to change back into a color size object. Now, the next thing I want to do, oh, and I just realized there I skipped over something before. When you read the dog object back from the file, read object returns an object type, but I know it was a dog because that's what was saved out. So you just need to perform a cast there to turn it back into a dog object. Now, I'm just going to pause there and add in some more code. Now, what I've added in here is a parent class, so animal. It does implement serializable, and the only thing it has in it that's extra is the name. So any subclass will inherit a name. Any subclass will have a name. There's constructors here, there's a get and set name, and the toString there as well. And the dog class, it extends animal and it implements serializable, and everything else there I've added back in the super toString to print out the name. And if I run that just to see, we have a dog created. His name is Spot, so that's added in now because of the parent class animal, color, dog size. That's what gets saved out to file, and when it's read back from file, everything there is fine, so nothing to worry about there. Now, what you do need to know there for your exam, if the parent class does not implement serializable, but the child class, and this is the one that I am serializing, does implement serializable, what will happen is it will save the dog out to file with its name, with its collar, and with the dog size. It will all of those variables will get saved out to file. But when it's deserialized, because the parent class doesn't implement serializable, it will call the constructor again for the parent class, and as a result, any member variables that were in the parent class will get assigned null. So if I run that, so this is the dog object that's been saved to file, Spot, color size of 4, dog size 10, and when it's been deserialized, because animal class, the parent, does not implement serializable, it needs to call the animal constructor, and as a result, the name comes from the animal class. It is a value of null, but anything in the dog class which is serializable there would be okay. And that is everything that you need to know for serialization and deserialization. It is, of course, there in the book there on page 301. Just having a quick flick through in case there's anything that I've spotted, anything that I've missed out. Oh yeah, very last thing there on page 313. Something that's static will not be serialized, won't be saved out. Something that's static belongs to the class and it does not belong to the object. So if there is any static variables, they are not saved out to file because it's object code that's been saved to the file. Back down in main, it's the D1, the dog that's created, and that's what's being saved. If there's any static variables in there, they do not belong to that object. So it's just objects that are serialized and deserialized.